So I want to speak about being worthy today. And I found all these quotes from Ernest Holmes and I couldn't figure out where to put them, so I'm putting them at the beginning. Um, One of the things, and by the way, for those of you who are new, Ernest Holmes is the founder of the Centers for Spiritual Living, although he would not recognize us by that name. He said, if there's any doubt in your mind as to whether or not God or life wishes you to have the best, ask yourself, could God who is freedom conceive restriction? Could God who is limitless conceive lack, want, limitation, or bondage? Could God who is perfect life conceive anything that limits the joy of living? And then he also wrote, he said, we say this every day. I surrender all fear, all doubt. I let go of all uncertainty. I know there is no confusion, no lack of confidence. I know that what is mine will claim me, know me, rush to me. I accept the gift of life for myself and for everyone else. And so most of you know that when I prepare a message, Beck Mundo helps me with it. She does most of the research. And every once in a while, she'll write me her thoughts on what I should say. And sometimes I understand what she wrote. And this is one of those times. So I want to share with you something Becky wrote about this topic. She said, through our growing up years, we've accumulated, and she has no idea I was going to do this, by the way. Through our growing up years, we've accumulated beliefs about ourselves that have come from outside experiences. And if they haven't been positive experiences, we carry the weight in our subconscious minds of not being enough, not being good enough, not being smart enough, not being pretty enough, not being handsome enough. We start to identify with these labels instead of seeing them as illusions we've created with our thoughts. Feeling unworthy keeps us from experiencing who we really are, spiritual beings having a human experience, which can be a very joy-filled experience. We need to begin to love, trust, and accept ourselves. So I just want to share some thoughts with you about being worthy. And Alan Cohen, when I saw that Ginny was going to read from Alan Cohen, I thought, oh my God, I hope it's not what I was going to do. But he says that the Course in Miracles states that healing doesn't happen only by behavior. It's about attitude. And he said, you know, the world, life, doesn't make us what it wants us to be. We make life what we want it to be. And the attitude comes before the behavior. Oh gosh, I have another quote by Ernie. So this will be the last one. He said, nobody chooses dysfunction, conflict, pain. Nobody chooses insanity. It happens because there's not enough presence in you to dispel the darkness. You have not woken up yet. And that's kind of what I want to speak about today. So Gary Zukav says that one thing that keeps us from feeling unworthy, it's for Catherine. One thing that keeps us from feeling unworthy, it's the idea that you're flawed. It's wanting to be loved and not feeling lovable. It's not feeling that you're enough, no matter what you do. He said it's feeling powerless. It's self-loathing. And he said what we do to try to escape that is we try to bring into our life external power, whether it's at work, whether it's in our relationships, whether it translates into having the biggest car, the biggest house, the picture perfect wife or husband, whatever it is. He said, but healing doesn't happen until we're willing to look inside at our authentic power. That's when healing begins. That's when we can start to feel worthy. And he also said, for those of us with partners, that spiritual partners can really help us along the road, because they can say to us when we're starting to fall off track, hey, you're starting to fall off track. Move back into your authentic power and move in to your healthy behaviors and your healthy attitudes. So I want to tell you a story about a family that goes into a restaurant. And it's a mom, a dad, and a 5-year-old little girl. And the parents order their meal, and the little girl turns to the server, and she says, "I'll have a hot dog, fries, and a Coke." And the father turns to the server and says, "No, she won't. She'll have meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and milk." And the server turns to the little girl and says, "And tell me, what would you like on your hot dog?" And the family was stunned. And the little girl looked at her dad and said, "She thinks I'm real." And the message is that when we're taught at an early age that our desires, that our views, that our fears, that our values don't carry much weight, we feel we need to be different. We feel that we need to be better, to be accepted. I read this week that Oprah Winfrey said that one of the great learnings of doing her show for, what was it, 25 years, she said that the thread that runs through the pain that we all suffer from is unworthiness. She said not feeling worthy enough to live the life that we've been created for. And she said, even people who believe that they're worthy of being happy and having nice things, oftentimes when they get those things, don't feel worthy of them. And she said, another thing that I've learned from 25 years of doing this show is that you are worthy because you were born. You are worthy because you're here. You are enough all by yourself. And that's really the message. And the only reason that a person doesn't have the life that they want is they don't feel they deserve it, so they don't take responsibility for creating it. Rachel Remen is an MD, and I want to read a quote from her. She said, "Healing may not be so much about getting better as about letting go of everything that isn't you, all of the expectations, all of the beliefs, and becoming who you are." So I want to talk a little bit about what we can do to do that. And I just want to tell you, I know how easy it sounds, but I know how easy it isn't, too. So a lady named Gail Brenner wrote a blog, and she said, here's some things we can do to help ourselves with our sense of worthiness. And one of them is to let go of the past. Let it go. If you've got thoughts and beliefs with all of this negative energy, it's kind of like what Becky was writing about. To don't give them energy. I spoke a couple of months ago about somebody who came up with the idea of ants, automatic negative thoughts that pop into our head. And the first thing you have to do in order to get rid of them is to realize you're doing it, because so many of us do this negative self-talk that we don't even realize that it's happening. And somebody was just saying to me this week that I gave a talk and I asked her to critique it. She's a professional speaker. And she said, in the whole talk, one of the stories I liked the best was about the time you were facilitating a group, and the group was really on kind of what I'm talking about now, that you're enough. And there were 10 of us, I think, 12 maybe, and I dropped my pen. And as I went down to pick up my pen, under my breath, I said, "Klutz." And when I came back up, the woman sitting across from me, who was a friend, said, "Did you hear what you just did?" And I said, "No, what did I do?" She said, "You're teaching a class, teaching us on how to see ourselves in a better light, and you just called yourself a klutz because you dropped your pen." And the point is to not give energy to those thoughts. Wayne Dyer, in one of his books, said when he gets thoughts like that, he just says to himself, "Next, next." It's a pretty simple way to do it if you can remember to do it. So a second thing that we can do to develop a sense of worthiness is to challenge our beliefs about ourselves. If we've got these negative beliefs, to challenge them. and to know that they're really not real. They're perceptions that we put there. They're illusions, and we can challenge ourselves and move them out. And a third thing we can do is we can take a risk. We can step out and take a risk and see what happens if we're real to other people. And you'd be surprised it'll be a much more positive experience than you think. So I'm going to speak about Brene Brown later at the end, actually, of my message. She is in Time magazine. For those of you that don't know her, she's been on Oprah a lot. She's a research professor at the Graduate School of Social Work in the University of Houston. So she writes a lot about vulnerability. And in Time magazine, she talks about failure. And she says the reason that she's interested in failure is because she's interested in courage. And in the magazine, it's only a one-pager, she talks about what it takes to overcome failure. But the thing that interested me, she talked a little bit about shame. What do you think is the number one factor for women in shame? The number one shame factor for women?
Weight.
Looks.
Sex. Body image.
Did you say sex? I like your answer better, but it's not right. It's appearance and body image. And what do you think the number one shame factor for men is?
Career. Macho-ness.
Who said that? Weakness, appearing weak is which is kind of the same thing. That's the number one shame factor for men. And she says that shame needs three things to grow: secrecy, silence, and judgment. So I want to tell you a story about, this is a true story. I have this book by this Buddhist monk named Ajahn Brahm. And it's all different kinds of stories. And so he tells this story that at some point, his order purchased land to build a monastery. And they had no money. After they did that, they couldn't do it for a while. He said they were so poor that the monks were sleeping on doors, old doors, with no mattresses. And it was a really difficult time. And so in order for them to start building on this land, they had to learn how to be builders. And he took it on himself to do some masonry, to build a wall, a brick wall. And he describes how difficult it is. He said it looks really easy, but it's really hard. And so he gets all done building this brick wall, and he looks at it, and he thinks, I did a good job. This is really good. And then he looks some more, and he sees there are two bricks at a bad angle. And he looks, and he says, oh my gosh, the whole wall is ruined. And he's really embarrassed, and he thinks the whole thing looks terrible. And he goes to the abbot, and he says to the abbot, could I start all over again? Could I tear it down and build it all over? And the abbot says, no, you can't do that. And so when people would come to visit, he would try to steer them away from the wall because he was so embarrassed that two bricks were at a bad angle. And one day they had a visitor, and he overhears the visitor saying, that's a really nice brick wall. And so he goes over to this guy and he said, did you leave your glasses in your car? Can't you see those two bricks that are at bad angles? And the fellow said, yes, I can see them, but I can also see the 998 that aren't. And Ajahn said it stunned him when the guy said that, because he was so embarrassed by the two mistakes. For the first time, he realized that there were so many more good bricks than the two that were out of place. And he said, I had been blinded by it, and all I could see was the two bad ones. And it got him to thinking. He said, how many of us get depressed and maybe even think of ending our life because all we could see within us are our bad bricks when we have so many more good bricks. And he said, how many people have blown relationships because all they could see in their partner were the two bad bricks and not all the good. He said we can push ourselves to just being able to see mistakes and failures when there's so much more about us and about others around us that's positive. And then he ended this, I think this is really funny, he ended it by saying, he got up and told this story, he tells it a lot, he said, and one time after he told it, a guy came up to him and said, I'm a builder. And he said, to tell you the truth, every time we build something with bricks, we make some mistakes. And then what we usually do is we go to our clients and said, I added an original feature for you, and I charge him $1,000 more. So Elijah Goldstein is a PhD, and wrote that again, looking at this whole topic, that we grow up searching for a way to belong. That for a lot of us, social isolation is our greatest fear. And so many of us grow up believing something's wrong with me. And that feeds our cycle of unworthiness and shame. And what he says is we need to practice mindfulness. That it's a way of gaining greater understanding of our inner workings and healing our past hurts. And when we do that, we experience the self-compassion and self-love that we've always needed. And when we run away, with addictions, whether it's drugs or alcohol or whatever it is, when we run away, the message that we're giving ourselves is that we're not worth paying attention to. So we try to hide. We're not worth paying attention. And we need to open up our hearts to our vulnerabilities and to be aware that we are worth paying attention to. So now I want to go back to Brene Brown. And those of you that have seen her know she's really, really wonderful on Oprah, or she does a really great TED Talk also. And she said, one thing that separates people who feel a deep sense of love and a deep sense of belonging, as opposed to people that are struggling for it, is their belief that they're worthy of it. And she said, it's that simple and it's that complicated. If you want to feel loved and you want to feel like you belong, you've got to feel worthy of belonging and being loved. And she said, you have to feel it right now, this minute. Worthiness doesn't have prerequisites. So it's not when I lose 20 pounds. It's not when I get pregnant. It's not when I get the promotion. It's not when I become a partner. It's not when I stay sober. She said, it's worthy now. No ifs and not when. That we're all worthy of love and belonging right now, just because we're here. And she said we need to take the long walk from what will people think to I am enough. I am enough. And she said it all starts with one step, and that step is courage. She said heroes are often about putting their lives on the line. Courage is all about putting our vulnerabilities on the line. Being able to openly and honestly say, here's who I am. Here's what I feel. And let me tell you about my experiences. And I want to close with how she ended the blog that I read. She said, owning our story and loving ourselves through that process is the bravest thing we will ever do. Thank you for being here. God bless you. And have a great week.